Hello, my name is Doug Smith, and welcome to this week's edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth Town Hall. Today is 9 November 2012, and our guests today are John King, the Emergency Manager of Portsmouth. Welcome, John.
Good morning.
And John Klimm, our Town Administrator. Welcome,
Thank
John.
you.
We just wanted to have another session on the emergency management response to Hurricane Sandy. And John, it appears that we fared fairly well in Portsmouth compared to a lot of the other communities that were down on the coast, and certainly those further west of us. How do you think that generally the response was, and how do you think we got through this?
Relative to some of our neighbors, we did quite well. We had power disruptions in Portsmouth. We had some minor coastal flooding, nothing to the extent that they suffered down in South County, and certainly nothing to the extent that the people down in New York and New Jersey suffered. All in all, we were fortunate.
Yeah, I think if that storm would have moved a little bit further to the north, we would have been in pretty deep trouble.
Absolutely.
John, from your perspective, how do you think it went, and what have people been telling you about the response during the storm?
Well, this is my first effort here in Portsmouth, and so I was looking at it anew, and was very pleased at the coordination. I cannot say enough about John King in terms of not only his knowledge and expertise, but his commitment. As you know, Doug, John was there right night and day from the very beginning when we opened up the center till we closed it. And I hope that the residents of Portsmouth know how blessed we are to have John as the director. As well, all of our department heads and the water district, the school department, or whatever, came together. And I think that from a coordination standpoint, I think that we were well served.
Yeah, I think it's important, too, that people note this did not just all happen by itself. This was some preparation that John did, and other people got together and thought this thing through quite well, I think, after that tropical storm Irene last year, and I think it improved greatly. John, how well do you think we were prepared for the storm?
We were as prepared as anyone can be for this storm. From the after-action review we did from Tropical Storm Irene, we implemented a number of changes in the response plan. That was a good thing. We also had a drill in August of this year, a hurricane drill in the EOC with all the town department leaders. Mr. Klimm was there. We simulated a hurricane, ran through a 2-hour simulation of all the what-ifs. That was good. We also did a activation drill of the EOC that coincided with Portsmouth Fire's open house on September 30th. So we had a full-up drill of all the people in the EOC, all the volunteers, the communications team, the internet public information team, and the leadership. So we were well prepared and drilled.
You know, as one of your volunteers, I have to agree with everything you said. I think those earlier activation of the EOC for a couple of hours were very interesting to all of us to actually get in there and see how it all worked, and I think it helped a lot during the storm as well. I think it's important to note that you mentioned the after-action report from Irene. I know you all just completed a major comprehensive after-action meeting this week regarding how everything went during Hurricane Sandy. Can you share with us some of the details of that, some of the results of that?
The purpose, let me back up and get the 10,000-foot view of the purpose of the after-action review. Ultimately, the goal is to generate an improvement plan, and there's a series of steps in that process. The first step is to perform immediately after the event a hot wash, capture all the things that went right, all the things that went wrong. We did that and generated a 7-page document here, which will be publicly available. And once we have this list of things from the hot wash, the things that went right, the things that went wrong, we get into the analysis phase. And in the analysis phase, there's a fork in the road of capturing best practices and remediating the things that could have been better. So the best practices we'll capture and look at our standard operating procedures and see if they're already in the SOP. Some of those practices are already in the standard procedures. Some of them are new, something we tried for the first time. We note, hey, that worked well. we bake that into the standard operating procedure for the next response. On the corrective action side, on the things that didn't do so well, we do cause analysis. We get to the root cause of each one of those things. We make recommendations on how to improve it, and then we set a timeline. Who's responsible to fix it? How long do they have to fix it? And how are they going to fix it? So the ultimate goal from the AAR, the After Action Review, is the improvement plan.
Okay. Now, all that remedial things that you mentioned, are they included in this hot wash-up report?
Oh no, the hot wash is just to capture the actual facts of the event. The entire process will take months. And some of the items in here may be things that require budgetary funds. They might go in the next year's budget.
Sure.
But from what we know now, I can't tell you what the ultimate improvement plan will be.
Okay. But now, getting specific to Hurricane Sandy, what were some of the findings? What were the general findings of the hot wash-up, if you can summarize any of that?
We have 6 pages of findings here, Doug. We'll put this document out publicly, and I encourage people to take a look at it.
But generally speaking, do you think you did reasonably well compared, let's say, to Irene?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Because we captured so many things during Irene that we didn't do well, you can look at that review and look at our performance in Sandy, and those things were fixed and worked well. As far as the public perception, I would defer to Mr. Klimm on that. He gets the public input that I don't.
He takes the heat.
Well, yeah, I hope it wasn't heat.
There were several issues that are new this year. Obviously, Code Red. With the vote in support of the town council, we were able to implement this emergency communication system called Code Red, and we have received some feedback. And interestingly, not one resident has come up to us and said that they felt bothered or inconvenienced by them. I think people understand that this is serious business. You know, we made a commitment, Doug, early on that we weren't going to use this willy-nilly, that we weren't going to call every 15 minutes with a new update, that we were only going to do it for emergency purposes to get needed information out. And I think we were judicious in terms of the number of times that we used the service. But we were very pleased at the results. Now, people are contacting us now saying, "Hey, my neighbor got a notice on their email, through email, or they got a call on or a notice on their cell phone, or through text messaging. Why didn't I do that?" And so, while this is fresh in everyone's mind, we hope that our citizens go to the town's website and click on the Code Red icon and update the information, because that additional information needs to be inserted per household, and so we hope people will do that.
I think Code Red comes with essentially a deck of all the telephone numbers that are publicly available in Portsmouth. Yes. But it's important to note that people do need to go in and add their cell phones or add anything else that they'd like to get an email, a text message, etc. They need to go on the website and sign up for that, and that's an important message.
Another major issue that we're looking at is the whole issue of the importance of the volunteers. And how we might improve that. Because the truth is that we had incredible volunteers, but we didn't have enough of them. And so we're asking interested citizens to contact us if they think they might be interested in becoming part of a team. And I know that, Doug, you know, because you were involved with this, that the critical role that the volunteers played throughout the storm. The problem is that the length of time that we were requiring them to participate, with 12-hour shifts, just too much. And so, if we could, from now until our next storm, double the number of volunteers, I think we would be well served.
Yeah, and I think too, what I'd like to talk about a little bit later on in this program is, what kind of people you're looking for, what kind of skills do they need. I know there's online training available through FEMA, and we can talk about some of that. Let me get back briefly, though, to the hot wash-up part of this thing. John King, I should say, who exactly was involved in the hot wash-up, and how does it go? Do people just kind of come in and they bring how they think their departments did and that kind of stuff, or is it a more formal kind of a setting?
Well, it's not a formal setting, Doug. But it was attended by all of the agency leaders from the town that were involved in the response. We had fire chief, deputy fire chief, police chief, deputy chief, facilities director from the school district, the town planner, the electrical inspector, the town administrator, myself. I'm leaving some people out here, but we had a dozen people at the hot wash. And they bring a list of things to the hot wash that they observed from their particular vantage point. It may or may not have involved their particular agency. It may be something they noted in general, or it may have been a strength or weakness from their particular agency. All inputs are good, and we capture all of them, and we work them off.
I guess one of my questions had to do with any public input, and I assume that several of these department heads might have brought with them, you know, in part of their own discussion of how they did, what the public was telling them as well. Was there any other formal way that the public could offer comments on how they thought it went?
There is a survey being taken right now, an online survey. If you go to the Portsmouth Town website or the Portsmouth Emergency website, you can see that survey. I believe Portsmouth Patch has also helped us publicize that survey. I'm not sure whether or not we have it in the Newport Daily News, but I encourage people to complete that survey and let us know how we did in their estimation. I think John gets some more public feedback than I do. He may have had people call directly into town hall.
We have had quite a bit of feedback, and I want to, while we're heaping accolades on some of the major actors here, I think that we would be remiss if we didn't mention our citizens, because going around town and seeing that some of the stores were out of water and out of batteries or whatever meant to me that people really took this seriously, that they pre-planned, that kind of the message that John was involved with before the storm took hold. And we can't thank our citizens enough, because obviously that makes our job so much easier.
Well, I know you were out and about yourself during the height of this thing, going out with the police and the fire chiefs, seeing what the actual on-scene things look like. Did you get many people out there in the streets or grabbing you when you went by to say,
well,
hey?
there actually was a number of people. I'm not going to say that I was happy to see that, but there were a lot of folks out in their front yard, and especially in the Island Park area, Common Fence Point, and some of the areas that were most impacted. So as we were driving around, we'd get out to talk to folks to make sure they were all right, and ask them how they were impacted through, with flooding and that type of thing. So we got a lot of feedback that way as well.
Okay, well, if I can ask you, gentlemen, let me take a short break here. I'd like to try to bring Richa Lipsky in to talk help John talk a little bit more about the Internet Public Information Team. But thank you very much for joining us today, John.
Thanks.
Okay, welcome back. I'd like to introduce our guest for the second half of the program, Richa Lipsky, who is also the head of the Internet Public Information Team on the EMA organization. Welcome, Rich.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Rich, before we get to you and the work you and your team have done with social media and things, John, let me go back to Code Red, because I understand you've got some statistics that are kind of interesting on Code Red use.
Yeah, on the Code Red notification we made for the Hurricane Sandy incident, these figures were provided by Chief Hebert. All within the space of 17 minutes, we pushed out 9,045 phone calls, 1,345 emails, 991 text messages, and 97 mobile applications were notified. And out of the 9,000 voice messages, there were 31 callbacks, numbers that were busy that Code Red called back until they got a...
Only 31, wow, that's pretty good.
Well, I guess people weren't on the phone when they called, but basically 9,000 calls in 17 minutes was
That's
impressive
quite incredible.
to me.
And,
To me, it's impressive, yes.
how many homes do we have in Portsmouth? About 6,000, 7,000. So we basically got a great response then out of Code Red so far. Again, just to reiterate what John Klimm was saying earlier, though, and I think you'd backed it up, was if you didn't receive Code Red notification on all the media you wanted, to include your cell phone, email, etc., go onto the websites.
Yeah, go to portsmouthemergency.com or the town website, sign up, and my advice is sign up early and often. You can't sign up too many times.
Yeah. And if you sign up for something you've already done, it'll tell you that. So It's quite all right. Okay, let me get back to, I think one of the key things that you focused on after Irene was the whole issue of public information and public communications, both ways. And one of the things I think that was done differently here during Hurricane Irene was your use of social media. You want to kind of explain the genesis of this, John, and how you put this thing together?
The genesis of the social media outreach was directly a result of the after-action review we did during Tropical Storm Irene. We heard loud and clear from the people of Portsmouth that they expected us to be on the internet and on social media such as Facebook and Twitter. That came through loud and clear, and we started developing a plan to do just that. In fact, we started making those plans the week after Irene, as I recall. We sat in the Deputy Police Fire Chief's office and went through this, and we implemented this over a period of time. Our PortsmouthEmergency.com website went live in July of this year. The Facebook and Twitter accounts went live a little bit before that, I believe, as I recall. And then we needed a team to actually drive those social media, because in an emergency, everyone is tasked. All the people in the Emergency Operations Center have something to do. We had the mechanics of the website, the Twitter and the Facebook outlets, but we didn't have the people to man those positions. So we reached out to the public, and people such as yourself and Mr. Lipsky responded and formed an Internet Public Informations team that we're 100% dependent on for that to succeed.
Rich, from your perspective, how do you think that went, and how did you develop this team?
Well, I think it went exceptionally well. We kind of formed the team about a month before Sandy, not knowing that Sandy was going to come along, and John and us had like a little exercise at the Emergency Operations Center that we actually stood up the team, and the team has essentially a laptop computer that looks at the town's website, a Facebook account, and a Twitter account. And as we exercised this, we had this another software program called TweetDeck that kind of lets you look at all of those at one time. So when it came time for Sandy, then we stood that up using those accounts, and it was really amazing how it kind of caught on. I think we had 6 followers on Twitter. By the end, we had about 90 followers. On Facebook, we started out with about 17 people who liked us, and we ended up with nearly 400 people that liked us. And if you look at, and the Facebook and Twitter accounts have these little graphs, and you could see the graph go up during the first day and ramp up. And I think at one time the count was we had about 5,000 exchanges on all those accounts. And we actually fed on other accounts. We found that as we had a little hashtag, hashtag Sandy02871, and we found that other people had picked up on that, like Sandy McGee at Portsmouth Patch. So we started to look at their Twitter account and Facebook account, and then we started to look at Newport Daily News, and we had all those on our screen, and we were able to see what other people were talking about outside our community and inside our community on what was going on an interactive basis. And as we found information, we were able to post it on the blog, which is at PortsmouthEmergency.com, which is really an authoritative chronology of what's going on during the event.
I think it's important for people to know, though, that this is not one-way communications. This is two-way communications. I know people would come in and say, for example, is this transfer station open? And then we'd find out, and we'd turn around and put it out in the three media, the blog, the Facebook page, and the Twitter feed, that yes, the transfer station is open. So I mean, it was a good way to put out non-emergency communications. I guess that's the other thing we need to stress, is that all of these social media outlets are not meant for emergency communications. All people should always call 911
Right.
in the event of an
Although I
emergency.
read in the New York City area, it was even a supplement to 911. 911 was overwhelmed in New York
True.
City. People kept getting busy signals. So they started to go into Twitter. And the Twitter account, people were saying, we'll take your information, but keep calling 911 for your emergency call. So it really acted as an overflow of people that were just getting constant busy signals for 911.
Yeah.
So in some cases, it might even work for emergency communications when people just can't get through to
Sure, so
911.
they could certainly post things, but they
Right.
can't necessarily expect the same response
That's right.
they would get with 911, which is the safe bet if you can. John, how do you think this thing went from your perspective?
The internet public information, it went absolutely swimmingly. I was thrilled with the performance of the IPI team and with the engagement we got from the public. It was the issue that Rich discussed about the hashtag in use, that was a key. We put that out pretty early, and we were able to monitor everything that was happening in Portsmouth with Hurricane Sandy. The web page was well subscribed to. People followed the blog carefully. It was interesting that Channel 12 had all 39 cities and towns in Rhode Island listed during the storm and what they were doing. And out of those 39 cities and towns, we were the one town that had a link to our website about live information being blogged. I was quite proud of that.
Now, have you spoken to the other EMA managers or directors around the state? And I just wondered, do they even use social media at all in the rest of Rhode Island?
No. As a rule, no. Providence does. Providence actually was engaged long before Portsmouth. Providence is also a little different scenario, big city, big budget. As far as the other smaller cities and towns, we are light years ahead of most of the other communities. But I think everyone in the emergency management community realizes that social media is important, and they'll be coming on board momentarily.
I know last week Chief Hebert was even saying that it really saved him a lot of time and things on the telephone, answering people's calls because they had another way to communicate this stuff.
That's
so
what
there's a lot of spin-offs.
That is what I hoped we would see, Doug, in that it would reduce their call load because people had the information. They didn't have to make a phone call. All they had to do was log on, look at Facebook, look at Twitter, look at the website. They'd have the information to reduce the call load at both police and fire.
Yeah, so that was kind of a side benefit in addition to just the information flow issue. I know we've got a survey up that you mentioned earlier on, what did people think about this response? Is there anything either one of you can share about what the results might be so far on that survey? I know we've had something like over 30, I think you said, responses so far. Has anybody looked at the data just to see how we're doing or what the public sense is?
I certainly have. I've looked at the preliminary data, and I think we had 34 responses last time I looked, which would have been early this morning. And I can generally say that it is the exact opposite of the response we had from Tropical Storm Irene. The final results aren't in yet. I encourage people, please, to take that survey. Let us know. But it looks like we have certainly turned around the operation in the eyes of the public.
Let me kind of end up with the issue that John Klimm mentioned, the issue of volunteers. Obviously, volunteers are important to your operation, both on the communication side, your radio operators, people that are answering the telephones, and the IPI team. I would assume that more people are needed. 12-hour watches get old pretty quick for a lot of people. What kind of skills are you looking for, and what kind of volunteers would you like to step forward and volunteer?
We need people in the internet public information team who are internet savvy. Rich, you could probably give it a better feel for what those skills are.
Sure. But you don't have to be a computer geek. None of the people on our team are really computer geeks. You just have to, be kind of familiar with operating a computer because the software is very easy to use. You have to make a commitment. You just can't, you have to say, hey, I have to be ready. There are 4 of us on the team, and you have to be kind of basically trained. John has us go through 3 FEMA online courses, 2 on emergency operations center operation and one specifically on social media. So you can't go in there and just say, I'm just going to sit down and go on the computer. You have to really understand the context knowledge, and John has done a good job about making us do those online courses. But we really like to get some more volunteers. It's not hard to do. It's kind of fun, as a matter of fact, but you know, it is a commitment. But if we get more people as volunteers, you know, we can reduce that watch standing time, and everybody can kind of contribute, have fun, and not make it their entire life during the storm.
Well, if people would consider joining this thing or want to get involved, what would they do, John?
Go to the Portsmouth Emergency website. We'll put up an email address, my town email address. Contact me via email or call Town Hall, contact Mr. Klimm, and we will pursue it from there.
Okay, maybe we can put something up on the town website as well.
The town site would be excellent, yes.
Okay, great. We just got through, right after Hurricane Sandy, we had a nor'easter come through and it blew hard for 2 days. It made us feel like we're in January rather than early November. But I guess that should give everybody a little bit of pause. What is your advice, John, for people going forward in the winter here? What should they do to prepare for the next winter storm?
Well, if you don't have your 72-hour kit, get it now. One of the things I was delighted to see just before Hurricane Sandy was that Clements Market had a 72-hour kit at the door, laid out on a table, all the things you needed for a 72-hour kit. That hit people right as they walked in the door, and I can't thank our friends at Clements enough for doing that. Have your 72-hour kit. Go to the federal government's ready.gov website. Heed the information there, act on that information, and realize that 72 hours is a bare minimum that you should be prepared to survive on your own. Look at the people in the New York and the outlying areas. They are still out of power, will be out of power until Thanksgiving perhaps.
Sure. I'd like to put in a plug too for people to go like our Facebook page, and also if they're Twitter enthusiasts to sign up for our Twitter feed, because both of those are things that, as you say, it went very steeply up during the emergency. It'd be better if people kind of gradually grew on that thing and liked us even before the emergency, so they'll get the stuff we're putting out. I'd like to thank both of you gentlemen for coming in. I want to cut a few minutes early because I've got a special message for Portsmouth residents, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug.
Okay, just cut early from the regular schedule program to bring you a couple of special announcements here. The first thing is to announce that the Portsmouth 375 T-shirts are here, and they're going on sale at Clements and DeCastro's. This is what the front of these great T-shirts look like with our male model, Gary Gump. Gary, would you like to turn around and show them the back? Absolutely. The back is equally important. These are the merchants, the local people who have supported us through their generosity. And we'd like people to certainly go out and patronize these folks who are great community resources. Okay, Gary, you can turn around now. We'll show the front off. I just want to mention one other thing before we end here. The first event of the year for our 375th will be the Polar Dive for 375, which will be held at Island Park Beach on the 1st of January. You'll be hearing more about that in the coming weeks. Please come on and join us. This is all for Portsmouth this week. Thank you very much.